your own home, Hare Krishna, Africa. And
Yeah.
without further ado, we'll put the verse on the screen and then you take it over from here, Maharaj.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
So I guess we can. Oh, okay. Yes. So greetings to everyone in Hare Krishna, Africa, and those of you also in other parts of the universe. I see a few familiar faces. We're going to be reading and discussing this verse from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, verse 30, on this day of Ramachandra's appearance. At least here in Europe, we're celebrating. I don't know if it's so in Africa or if you're yesterday or tomorrow, but today we're celebrating. So we may say something about Lord Ramachandra. But first, some pranati. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakṣuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savarutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Śrī Viṣṇu Nama Om Viṣṇu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Sanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaya Narottamam Deving Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashta Prayesh Pavadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishiki. This Canto 2, Chapter 1 is in the first step in God realization by Srila Prabhupada. This is getting toward the end of the chapter, verse number 30. And this section is introduced to a kind of Virat Rupa, not the only time in the Bhagavatam, as a first step in God realization, as a way to realize God by connecting all of what we see in nature to the form of the Lord. So let's read this verse. Dyaur akṣiṇī cakṣur abhūt pataṅgaḥ pakṣmāṇi viṣṇor ahanī ubhe tad-bhrū-vijṛmbhaḥ parameṣṭhi-dhiṣṇyam asya tālū rasa jihvā. And we have word for word meanings. Dyaur is the sphere of outer space. Akṣiṇī, the eyeballs. We may say something about this later. I looked this up in the dictionary. Cakṣuḥ, of eyes or senses. Abhūt, it so became. Pataṅgaḥ, the sun. pakṣmāṇi, eyelids. viṣṇoḥ, of the personality of Godhead, Śrī Viṣṇu. Ahanī, day and night. Ubhe, both cha and tat, his. Bhrū, eyebrows. Vijṛmbhaḥ, movements. Parameṣṭhi, the supreme entity, Brahmā. Dhiṣṇyam, post. āpaḥ, Varuṇa, the director of water. Asya, his. tālū, palate. Rasa, juice. Eva, certainly. Jihvā, the tongue. And then we have Srila Prabhupada's translation and also his purport. Translation: the sphere of outer space constitutes his eye pits, and the eyeball is the sun as the power of seeing. His eyelids are both the day and night, and in the movements of his eyebrows, Brahmā and similar supreme personalities reside. His palate is the director of water, Varuṇa, and the juice or essence of everything is his tongue. Purport. To common sense, the description of this verse appears to be somewhat contradictory because sometimes the sun has been described as the eyeball and sometimes as the outer space sphere. But there is no room for common sense in the injunctions of the Shastras. We must accept the description of the Shastras and concentrate more on the form of the Virat Rupa than on common sense. Common sense is always imperfect, whereas the description in the Shastras is always perfect and complete. If there is any incongruity, it is due to our imperfection and not the Shastras. That is the method of approaching Vedic wisdom. And so ends Prabhupada's purport to this verse, a short purport to what is a kind of list, in a continuing list of connections, we may say, connections between different phenomenon, for the most part, natural phenomenon, which we perceive in this world. We see the sun, I think especially in Africa. You get a lot of direct sun. Here in Poland, well, right now, no sun. We have clouds today. Yesterday we had sun. And so many other, night and day. Who doesn't experience night and day? Unless you're in Sweden in the middle of winter, in which case all you will experience is night. 24 hours, a little bit lighter, a little darker. If you go further north in Sweden. And in the summer, just the opposite. You'll experience only light that gets a bit darker at night. But generally, we know that we have this contrast. And that's interesting if we think about it, that this day and night that we experience, what is that in the universal form? It is the Lord's eyelids. Well, when we think of eyelids, we think of eyelids opening and closing, isn't it? Opening generally during the day, closing at night, but then also blinking, which was a cause of great consternation and frustration, and we can even say anger on the part of the gopis, causing them to criticize Lord Brahmā for such bad engineering work, that for just this quarter of a moment of blinking, we do not see our Krishna. So making connections like this of nature with nature that we experience for the most part, although here is also mentioned Varuṇa. His palate is the director of water, Varuṇa. So we might not have experience of Varuṇa. Maybe we have not seen the personality Varuṇa. So some of the descriptions here, some of the references may not be immediately known by us or experienced, as is the case in a similar list or lists in the Bhagavad Gita, but especially in the 10th chapter. Various semi-divinities, sages, and so on are mentioned, and we don't have experience of them. But then the point persists that all of these different features of nature, whether seen or not seen, are connected with the Lord, are identified as the body of the Lord, as features of the body of the Lord. And it's interesting that these are not connections made in the form of simile. A linguistic form called a simile is where something is described as similar to something else. It would be like saying the sun is like the eyeball of the Lord. But it doesn't say that. It says the sun is the eye of the Lord. and so on. Which makes it, if we think in, I guess in linguistic terms, it would be a kind of metaphor. And what is a metaphor? A metaphor is a linguistic bridge that connects, I think the technical term would be domains, two different domains of meaning. So that's kind of what seems to be happening here in this section of Canto 2, Chapter 1. We get this series of metaphorical, and therefore it is said, where is it said? Earlier or later, it's said that this universal form is imaginary. Imaginary because it involves our imagination. We look at nature, we see the sun. We may initially say, well, it doesn't look like enough to me. It looks like just a very bright object in the sky. But we're being invited to use our imagination, by which we can have a sense of, okay, we're not accustomed to seeing eyes that look like suns, but in the case of the Supreme Lord, his eyes can be like the sun, or not like the sun. His eyes can be the sun. And that leads us into what this whole Virat Rupa is doing, is inviting us to have a different perspective on the world. Everything it's making possible from the get-go for anyone who has any sort of senses to see and hear and taste and touch and smell, to experience the Lord. With the help of the imagination, I would say. With the help of the imagination and with the help of the Shastra, which is giving these connections. Now, I was a bit surprised when I read Prabhupada's purport. I read, he's speaking strongly as he always does. He's saying, don't get troubled with your so-called common sense. And here, it seems Prabhupada is speaking more generally of reasoning, of anumana. And we understand from our acharyas, especially Srila Jiva Goswami, that of the 10 traditional pramanas, or ways of gaining knowledge, by a process of elimination, he goes through all 9 of them that are not shabda, and shows how they are faulty, how they have limitations, and therefore are not reliable. We want reliable knowledge. Can we get it from pratyaksha, from anumana? Can we get it from upamana, which means comparison, or what is there? Ahitya, I think, is from tradition. And there's a few other minor ones, main 3 ones, the important ones in our tradition, pratyaksha, anumana, and shabda. So the point is, no, we cannot get reliable knowledge necessarily or indubitably, without doubt, from our senses and from reasoning. Much as we like to think that we can, they tell us, no, we can't. And so Prabhupada is launching right into that point in his purport. But when I read this, I thought, oh, wait a minute. How is he applying that to this verse? Because the verse is making a distinction between akṣiṇī and cakṣur. In his purport, he says, this may seem contradictory because sometimes the sun has been described as the eyeball and sometimes as the outer space sphere. Well, okay, I could go on and explain how I see it, that there's a distinction made, and I don't think that's very difficult to do. There's the eye socket, the eye pit, Prabhupada translates akṣiṇī, and there's the cakṣur, the eyeball, or the eye. Yeah. So one is the eye and one is the socket, which is holding the eye. So we can kind of get the sense, okay, the socket, that's being related with outer space, and the eye is being related to the sun. So, okay, we can kind of see how that would make sense. But Prabhupada is saying this may not make sense. And we may want to argue with Prabhupada. No, it makes sense. But Prabhupada is making a broader point here. Whether or not we apply it to the particular verse, he's making a broader point. He says, we must accept the description of the Shastras and concentrate more on the form of the Virat Rupa than on common sense. And before this, he says, but there is no room for common sense in the injunctions of the Shastra. And this may grate us, this may rub against us, not least because many times Srila Prabhupada will say that Shastra is reasonable, that there is reasoning, that it is common sense, that it is intelligent, that intelligence, when applied to Shastra, will show its reasonableness. And here Prabhupada is saying there is no room for common sense. So how to understand that? Well, I would suggest one way to understand it is that when something seems contradictory, it's time to sort of suspend disbelief and look for how something is not contradictory. This is the essential principle of, some people really don't like the word, but it's just an English word. It's a principle of our hermeneutics, of how we interpret Shastra. Hermeneutics just means the process of interpretation, or the philosophy of how to interpret. And There are many, many principles of interpretation that we use consciously or unconsciously. And one of them that's very consciously used in our tradition, especially in Vedanta, is called samanvaya. Samanvaya basically means, I had a definition for it here. Yeah. Literally, it means regular succession or order, a connected sequence or consequence, a conjunction, a mutual or immediate connection. Right, so what's that all about? Well, in the Vedanta Sutra, the Brahma Sutras, it's explicitly said, I think it's Sutra number 4, tad-bhrū samanvayat. Such is the case because of samanvaya. Hold on here. Yeah. Shastrayonitva tad-bhrū samanvayat. Yeah. So samanvaya, basically the name of the game of Vedanta, classical Vedanta, is to work out how all the different statements of the Upanishads fit together into a coherent whole, into a coherent philosophy. So we could say samanvaya means coherence. And the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra is explicitly saying this is what we're looking for, is this coherence. And we want that because it's the nature of, it's our nature, yes, common sense, but we do want consistency. We do want things to cohere. We want them to fit together. We do not want cognitive dissonance. So these are like basic principles of thinking. So, but then Prabhupada is saying there is no room for common sense in the injunctions of the Shastra. Is there no room, or is it that the room for it is sometimes not so easily found? And so we have to be ready to suspend the disbelief until the way of consistency is found. And the way of the consistency is found when we get the bigger picture, when we understand what's Shastra actually trying to tell us. What is the broader point? And so I might just very briefly share with you. Actually, maybe I can even, would it be possible for me to share screen?
Yes, I'm going to do that. All right. Yes, you may, please.
Okay, let's see if this will work. Where is it when I'm looking for? Yeah, this should be it. Okay. Share. Are you able to see anything?
Yeah, we're seeing the complete tattva samdarbha is evidence for this principle being an essential part of Vaishnava hermeneutics.
Good.
Okay, good. Yes.
There we have it. Yeah. This is one page of a very large work, which you may not be aware of, that was produced over a period of years by the GBC Shastra Advisory Council, which you might not know exists. But it does exist, and there's a long history of that and a long history of how this course in hermeneutics came about. Let's see if I can go to the title page and then come back to this. Yeah, ISKCON hermeneutics. All right, supplementary material, but really all of the material is in here. This is a booklet. Well, it's a whole book. It's more than 280 pages. And it's describing an approach to Shastra to help us, especially when we're confronted with difficult statements in Shastra, including difficult statements by our acharyas, including difficult statements by Srila Prabhupada. In other words, it's an attempt to deal with these sometimes what become very controversial matters in a systematic way. And how this unfolded was to articulate, first of all, how many did we have? I think 24. Yes, 24 principles. These are overarching principle, understanding tradition through Srila Prabhupada, accepting, well, that's the overarching principle. But then we have 24 principles and explanations for each one of these. So the first of the 24 is Sri Krishna is the object, purpose, and ultimate goal of all Shastric knowledge. And then we have an explanation with references from Shastra and from Srila Prabhupada, or including Srila Prabhupada, some of its purports. And you'll see sometimes specified one or another member of the Shastra Advisory Council. So Narayani Devi Dasi was one of the members, so she contributed this section. And like that, there's several members of this council. The second principle, I won't go through them all, is Shabda is the highest pramana. We just talked about this a little bit. And there's evidence for that. There's reasons why that's the case. The third one that I wanted to say a bit more about, Scripture provides theory and method for its own understanding. So Scripture doesn't just kind of throw itself at us and say, here it is, deal with it. It's your problem now. No, it gives some method, some process of how to understand itself. And we give then some examples of what that is. And here is the statement that I referred to from Vedanta Sutra 114, Tatu Samanvayat. Lord Krishna is the conclusion because of the agreement of the totality of all scriptural statements. That's, of course, a kind of expanded translation of 3 very compact words. But that's, yeah. Essentially, you cannot read the Vedanta Sutras without commentary. It's kind of designed to be read with explanations. Okay, so we have 24 principles, but there's more than that. Okay, you want to do this hermeneutics, you want to read Shastra and understand it? Great. Are you qualified? So then we have to look at our qualifications. And here we identified 6 specific qualifications, devotional qualifications or qualities for even making an effort to do this sort of thing. Humility and service mood, fidelity to the text and tradition, discerning search for truth, honesty and authentic conversation, openness to change and transformation, and benevolence and generosity. And there's more. We have some principles, we recognize qualities, and we may feel as we reflect on ourselves, well, maybe I'm a bit short on these qualities, but okay, let me pursue the qualities. Then there's more, and these are tools. And how many tools are there? We came up with 40 tools. So these are kind of practical ways. They typically take the form of questions. What sort of question to ask when considering a particular Shastric statement? And these are applied selectively as needed. So just like someone is repairing a car, an automobile, a skilled mechanic, he knows, usually it's he, maybe she knows which tool is good for which particular task and knows how to apply it. It's not that every tool is good for every purpose. So this, these tools are there available for use. For example, let's see, what was our first tool? Yeah, to ask the question, how does this statement point to Krishna? The statement that I'm wrestling with from Shastra. Well, in the case of the verse that we've just read, this is kind of obvious. It points to Krishna quite explicitly by these kind of identifications of natural features and bodily features, the form, the universal form, the Virat form of the Lord. So it's pointing quite directly. But we could perhaps go deeper. Okay, that it's pointing in this kind of metaphorical way. Is there, what kind of presuppositions might be behind the possibility to make such connections? You know, we could go in many directions with it. The second tool is just to consider the pramanas. Oh, here's the list. Pratyakshanumana, upamana, shabda, artapati, abhava, sambhava, arsha, aitihya, and cheshta. Yeah, we might think about all of these in relation to the verse that we've read. We might find some relevance, for example, to upamana in this case. So like that, there's that's got two parts. Then there's seeking guidance from Shastra itself. And here we set up a little 4-step method that one could seek guidance from Shastra, check if Srila Prabhupada himself has interpreted his statements. Step 1. Step 2, in a case where Prabhupada has not interpreted his own statement, one can fall back upon Shastra and check if Shastra has some interpretation for such a statement. Third, if we are unable to find a reference in Shastra for a particular statement, we should approach a learned devotee or a group of devotees who can point out the reference in Shastra for us. And fourth, if we are still unable to locate an exact reference in Shastra, we must ask a devotee who's been faithfully serving Srila Prabhupada to interpret the statement. Such a devotee should, and then there's 3 qualifications, be following the regulative principles, standards of behavior, demonstrate practical accomplishments in furthering his mission, and should be loyal to Prabhupada as founder at Śrī Viṣṇu. So quite some specifications for who you might want to listen to. Okay, that was just a flash introduction to this program of hermeneutics. It has been presented as a course, and it's been presented a few times online. As I said, most devotees still don't even know about it, but hopefully gradually more and more will get to know and may take the course and may become familiar with the practice. Because we who were involved in developing this felt that this would contribute greatly to the culture of discussion in ISKCON. We could have a more productive discussions. When controversies come up, sometimes they'll go in circles. My quote against your quote. And so how to get beyond that, that's one of the purposes, or a major purpose, of this program of hermeneutics. Okay, that's pretty much what I would have to say about on the topic of this verse, just from what I've thought of at present. We could stop there and see if there are any questions or comments or reflections. Otherwise, I have before me a translation of the unabridged Valmiki Ramayana, and we could read a few verses of that and just reflect as a gesture of celebrating Lord Ram's appearance day today. So please tell me what you would like me to do. Or
well, thank you so much.
Come.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you for the lecture. We will humbly suggest that you read briefly from the Ramayana, as you indicated, before devotees ask questions, because the questions might derail us from reading the Ramayana. So,
yeah. Okay. All right, so let's see, where should I read from? So this is Sundara Kanda, and it's been noted that the Sundara Kanda of the 7 kandas of the Ramayana is in many ways the most popular. It's the description of Hanuman searching for and then finding Sita, and then returning to report to Lord Ram after his very interesting discussion with Sita. There's another discussion, and that is between Sita and Ravana. And of course, Sita is being very strong in her assertions to resist the advances of Ravana. And Hanuman is he's being Hanuman, and as we may know, Hanuman is celebrated, some would say, at least as much as Rama. And in India, this is iconographically evident, seeing the murtis of Hanuman all over India, if not on every street corner, they're in all sorts of places. Hanuman is very much appreciated. And it seems that his popularity is on the rise. So, having said that, so Hanuman has been telling Sita about Rama's mood, his feelings of separation from Sita have been very intense. And so she's been listening to this, and then she says to Hanuman, upon hearing these words, Sita, her face like the full moon, spoke to Hanuman with words that were sensible and in keeping with righteousness. She says, "What you have said to me, monkey, that Rama has had no change of heart, but that he is constantly absorbed in his grief, is like nectar mixed with poison. Whether a man enjoys immense power or suffers the most dreadful calamities, fate ties him with its ropes and drags him. Surely the destiny of living creatures is inescapable, best of monkeys. Just see how Saumitri, Rama, and I have been confounded by calamity." Saumitri refers to Lakshmana. "When will Raghava, like a shipwrecked sailor swimming exhausted in the sea, reach the farther shore of his sorrow?" So this may remind us that Valmiki Ramayana is considered the primordial, the original poem. Valmiki is Adi Kavi. And Lord Brahmā, having heard the curse that Valmiki had spoken when he saw the Krancha bird being killed, his anger, his curse to the hunter, that it was in shloka form. It was in the form of a particular meter of Sanskrit. And so he was then commissioned to compose the Ramayana. So we get from this verse such a nice reminder how poetic how poetic the Ramayana is. And we may want to say how poetic Sita is, even in her distress. When will my Lord destroy the Rakshasas, kill Ravana, uproot Lanka itself, and see me again? You must tell him, make haste, for I shall live only until my allotted year has elapsed. So Ravana, this monster with the 10 heads, has threatened Sita that if you don't submit to me, then I will kill you and eat you. That's a real Rakshasa. So he wants to, he's trying to lure Sita into engaging with him in loving pastimes. But if he can't do that, he will kill and eat her. That is, what kind of mentality is that? It is now the 10th month. Only 2 more remain, monkey, for that was the period allotted me by cruel Ravana. His brother Vibhishana made strenuous efforts to persuade him to give me back, but he would not agree to that. Ravana does not choose to give me back, even though he has fallen under the power of doom, and death in battle is stalking him. All this was related to me by Vibhishana's eldest daughter, the maiden Anala herself, who was sent by her mother, O monkey. A wise, learned, and elderly bull among Rakshasas of India, who is steadfast and a person of character, urged upon Ravana that Rama would wreak destruction upon the Rakshasas. But even though that wicked creature holds of India in high esteem, he would not heed his beneficial words. I would expect, best of monkeys, that my Lord will soon come for me, for my heart is pure and his virtues are numerous. Monkey, Raghava is endowed with energy, bravery, strength, kindness, competence, valor, and power, since even without his brother, he slew 14,000 Rakshasas in Janasthana. Which of his foes would not tremble? The bull among men cannot be daunted by adversities, for I know his resolution, as well as Shachi, the daughter of Puloman, knows the resolution of Chakra. So Sita has full confidence that Rama is going to save her. But she is still in anxiety. She has 2 months to go. So then Hanuman says, as soon as Raghava hears that what I have to say, he will come here, leading a vast army of apes and monkeys. But better still, I myself shall free you from this Rakshasa and from this misery this very minute. Just climb onto my back, blameless woman. So now is going to be this interesting discussion where he's proposing, just climb on my back and I'll fly you back, and it's all going to be, it'll be over. And Sita says, what? What are you saying? And Hanuman demonstrates that it's completely possible for him to do this, that he has the power to do this. But of course, Sita says, no, not possible. It wouldn't, first of all, it wouldn't be proper. I'm a lady and you're a male something or other. So that wouldn't be proper. And aside from that, that would spoil the story. Rama has to come and save me. He has to be a hero. He has to, he has to prove himself. And so she rejects Hanuman's proposal. She says at one point, Hanuman, how can you even think of carrying me such a great distance? I think your monkey nature is showing. How can you, bull among monkeys, imagine that with your tiny body you could carry me from here into the presence of my Lord, the Lord of men? And then Hanuman thinks, Valmiki tells us, upon hearing Sita's words, fortunate Hanuman, son of Maruta, the wind god, thought, quote, the first thing she does is insult me. The black-eyed lady does not know my power and my strength. Therefore, by day he must see the form I can take at will. And then he shows this great form and makes it clear that he can do this. He says, make up your mind, my lady. Give up this disdainful attitude, Vaidehi. You must free Rama and Lakshman from their sorrow. Then she says, now I realize your strength and power, great monkey, your motion, which is like the winds, and your wondrous energy like that of fire. So she says, yeah, okay, I can see you can do it. But then her doubts come. It wouldn't be proper for me, she says. And besides, she says, I might fall from your back in fear as you speed along up there in the sky, high up above the ocean. If I were to fall helpless into the ocean filled with whales, sharks, and large fish, I would soon become a choice morsel for those creatures of the deep. Anyway, I should stop there. And yeah, this is our little dip into Ram Lila. In the absence of Ram, we're hearing Sita and having an exchange with Hanuman, a monkey who speaks perfect Sanskrit. Grantara Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Valmiki Rama ki jai, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for the original Bhagavatam Katha and also diving into Ram Katha. So, dear devotees, if anyone has a question, comment, realizations you want to share, you may indicate by using the hand emoji or raising your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to speak.
There's a written question, written to me, I guess, in the chat from Sita Sundari in Germany. Can you please say something regarding the ability of how to present the different statements in scriptures according to the person, the life situation of the person, and also about the danger of a leader who may be using different controversial statements in order to gain control over others? Okay, well, what can be said? We shouldn't do these things. Yeah, that's the danger of using Shastra as a hammer. The example that Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur gave is the story of the veterinarian who was called to save a horse who had swallowed a watermelon, and the watermelon was stuck in the throat of the horse. So the veterinarian goes to the horse. He's followed by his assistant, the apprentice, who stands and watches while the veterinarian takes a hammer and pounds on the side of the neck, on the neck of the horse, in such a way that he's able to break up the watermelon inside the throat, and then the throat is able, the horse is able to swallow, and he's saved. The story goes on that later the apprentice has his own private practice, and whenever he's called to help with, I don't know if it's only horses or any animals, he does the same thing. He takes a hammer and he bangs on the throat of the horse, thinking this is going to help. And of course, that's not the point. He completely. So similarly, we might foolishly hammer on someone with shastra in a way which is not helpful. So that's the skill of the preacher, sensitivity of the preacher. And I would say it's also about a preacher not only preaching, but also listening. It's about establishing communication. It's not a one-way street. One-way street preaching is generally of limited value. It depends on the circumstance, but it may not have its purpose, might not actually be obtained. So Prabhupada said, use your intelligence. Sometimes he would say, use your common sense. Here he says there's no place for common sense, but he also said there is place for common sense. So it's a skill. Like the verse we chant, Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. A shalaka is a kind of instrument. As I understand, it's a sharp instrument. And it's an analogy being used to give the idea of opening the eyes. Maybe I can look this up. Shalaka. What's a shalaka? So the skilled physician is able to skillfully use. Oops, that's not it. Let's try along a bhaka. Uh-oh. Nope, it's not cooperating. Oh, here it is. Shalaka, a small stick, a thin rod, a switch, a bar of a cage or window, a rib, a pencil, a finger, a toe. Pointed instrument, there we go. A pointed instrument for piercing. An arrowhead or a needle. So I think that's what's meant in that verse. Jnananjana Shalakaya. Unto you, unto him, the guru, who is like a needle opening the eye. And so the The idea is that the teacher, the preacher, the guru is skilled in the use of language. Anubhignamana. That one has to be skillful in using language appropriately. Satyam priyahitam chaya swadhyaya vyasanam chaiva. Yeah, of course, if one is just manipulating to gain control over others, that would mean that the person who is using Shastra to do that is not very enlightened and is him or herself insecure, since that's not the purpose of Shastra. Yeah, so Shastra can be dangerous in the wrong hands. That's a fact.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for the answer. I think it's a very beautiful question that was asked, and you answered it so beautifully. I personally appreciate the answer because as you were answering, I was trying to put some dots together, and it made perfect sense to me. Now it's kind of helped me to better deal with certain devotees.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the answer. Please go
yeah,
ahead.
I might add, if we're on the receiving end of the hammer, somebody's hammering at us with with Shastra, then we have to duck. We have to get out of the way. Because Shastra does, Jihvā Swami quotes this nice verse about how Shastra works in three ways, as a Prabhu, as a Mitra, and as Priya. Vedam Puranam Kavyam Cha Prabhu Mitra Priyeva Cha. That the Vedas teach like a master, the Puranas teach like a friend, and poetry teaches like a lover, and the Bhagavatam teaches like all three. Bodhayanti tihi prabhus trivrit Bhagavatam puna. So each in its place. There's, time, place, circumstance for everything. But if we're on the receiving end, we want to also be able to defend ourselves. And if we can't defend ourselves, we may want to get out of the way when someone is not appropriately using Shastra.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. So, Bhakta Hassan, please, you may unmute.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Shapapa, all glory for devotees. Thank you so much for the class, Maharaj. I was a bit late, so I didn't hear all the class, but I have this question about Hanuman. Please, Maharaj, if you can explain a little bit about Hanuman, how did he come to be? How he was born, or he come from a spiritual world, or why did he born a monkey? And because he has these supernatural powers, and he was with Lord Ram. So I just want to know how did he come to be? was he born, or he come from a spiritual world, or was he having a family or something like that?
Ah,
Yeah.
well, I have to thank you, but I have to admit it's been a while since I've read that particular story. But he is the son of. It's a little complicated, as I remember, but he's the son of Anjana and Vayu, right? He's called Anjaneya, and the wind god Vayu is the general explanation. I'm sure there's other explanations because the nature of these pastimes they're always multi-leveled and unfolded in folding and unfolding in so many countless ways. But why is he born as a monkey? I guess you're looking for a story. Was he cursed to be a monkey? And I don't remember any reference to any curse myself. I'm sure many devotees would be able to answer that, but that's something that I fall short on. But he's always identified as the son of the wind god, Vayu, and that is reflected in his powers of flight, and perhaps also his power to change his form, bigger and smaller, although I believe that was a boon that he receives, and then he forgets, and then he gets it again. So, yeah, he's sometimes identified as practically of a special. I don't know what kind of what is his tattva. I think that is really the question, isn't it? You know, he's not Vishnu. He's certainly not Vishnu tattva, but he is eternal associate of the Lord. And it's said that as we speak, Hanuman is now reciting the Ramayana. What does Hanuman do all the time? He remembers Ram and he remembers the pastimes. So, and we say Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman. We associate these four together.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank you so much.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Maharaj, I would say I've been so fortunate to take the hermeneutics class.
Oh, you did?
Yes, and if any devotee here hasn't taken that course yet, I humbly and respectfully recommend that devotees take it. And I don't know, I'm just a little ant perching somewhere in the corner of ISKCON as a spiritual revolutionary movement, but I would think that it should be like a mandatory course that all ISKCON devotees have to take.
Well,
Because
you would be surprised. It's actually a controversial course. There are those who say, no, this is all wrong. We shouldn't even be using the word hermeneutics. Prabhupada never used that word, and so on. But
well, I think that is the more reason why people should take it, because it helps open our minds and our approaches to reaching out to people, not imposing ourselves onto people.
Right.
And I believe that is the essence of Srila Prabhupada's movement, how to reach out to people. But if we do not do it the right way, like you were saying, using Shastra the wrong way, it causes lots of bruises. And sometimes serious injuries. So,
Yes.
well, I took it, but it is said that that is the first part, and the second part I've been waiting to hopefully enter into the second part. But
Oh, well, I'm not up. Yeah. The thing is, everybody is busy.
yeah, I
And
think that's what Mother Urmila was saying.
Mother Urmila, yeah, she's probably more busy than all of us put together.
Yeah. So, Maharaj, I have one. Of course, I have lots of questions, but I will start with three different aspects: the Bhagavatam text itself, the hermeneutics, and then the Ramayana. And I will start with the class itself, the text, where Srila Prabhupada was talking about the Virat Rupa is imaginary. And the title of the chapter says the first step in God realization.
Right.
So in other words, using imaginary situations to understand Krishna, or let's say imagination to understand Krishna, is the beginning step of God realization. We hear from Einstein, who says that knowledge is power, but imagination is more powerful than knowledge. In other words,
an interesting quote.
knowledge is good, but if we only depend on the knowledge, then we get stuck. There is no room for us to grow. Whereas when we have imagination, there is room to know more. And comparing that, which, excuse me to say, makes a lot of sense, because if we do not use our imagination, we get stuck, just like Shruti and Smriti. How do we relate that to imagination not leading us to speculation?
Yeah, that's the big topic. I think that would be a longer discussion than we have time for. It's something that I've wondered about a lot. And I've felt that imagination is kind of underrated. It seems to me that we have a negative sense of imagination as fantasy. And, you fantasize something which doesn't exist at all. And I don't think that's what's meant when Prabhupada says it is imagination. The Virat Rupa is imagination. I think he's saying that by means of our capacity to envision, we might say, maybe we get away from the word imagine, to envision, to make an image, to allow an image to come to our consciousness. That seems to be what is meant by imagination here. So it's a positive sense. It's not just imagination, it's therefore not real, but it's understood through imagination, through a process of making this, as I was saying before, metaphor is a kind of bridge between two domains. And it requires a bit of endeavor, a bit of action on our side when we hear something, to picture it. So where's the line? That Well, that I think we learn in the course of our practice of Krishna consciousness, and we're learning what is, a lot of it has to do with what is giving us a sense of greater connection to Krishna. But because there's it's a community effort. Shastra is essentially public, and we're guided by Shastra. And then within communities of readers, we can exercise our powers of envisioning. I mean, anytime we read description of Vrindavan in Krishna book in 10th canto, we need to use our imagination. Otherwise, it's just flat words that don't mean anything.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for that beautiful response. When you were talking about when you were discussing the hermeneutics, you were talking about pramana evidence as to which is supreme. You indicated there are 10 different evidences. Now we have Bhagavad Gita as it is, which is considered to be one of our major scriptures, our major authorities. Now, this Bhagavad Gita is a discussion between, or discourse between Krishna and Arjuna. But the very first text brings in Sanjaya. And this Sanjaya, personally, I do not know his authority. And all the Bhagavad Gita as we have today are all statements made by this Sanjaya. Now, how do we know that what Sanjaya is telling us is exactly what Krishna said to Arjuna, is exactly what Arjuna said to Krishna?
Now you want to be the skeptic.
A little bit.
That's all right. I would say that the tradition would say that because it has the stamp of approval of Vyasadeva, we can take it as reliable. I think that's what he would. I think that's what he would say. That's what acharyas would say. Vyasa, as composer of the Mahabharata, has included the Bhagavad Gita as spoken to Dhritarashtra. But see, we can also think of it in a sense this way, that narratively speaking, for the story of the Mahabharata, we get Sanjaya sort of appearing, if you like, you could imagine like as a performance on a drama on a stage. So in the first scene, Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya are there in order to set the scene for us. And then they go off stage and we just hear Krishna speaking with Arjuna. And the director of the drama, in this case, we can say Vyasa is like a director. The director says, on with the show. He doesn't come out and say, wait. Do we know that this is what Krishna says? After all, who is this Sanjaya? No, he's just giving us the background, the context, how it was spoken. And then once that's established, then he brings Krishna forward with Arjuna. Does that make sense?
Very much, yes. Sorry, yes, Maharaj. Yes, it does make sense. Especially when the opening remark was, we accept the Gita as it is because Srila Vyasadeva puts his stamp on it. He accepts it. So thank you so much, Maharaj. Yeah.
Okay.
So, dear devotees, anyone with any question, comment before we let Maharaj go? Any question? See, Maharaj, personally, I'm so happy to have your association all the time because this little head with a little brain with a very minuscule mind in it sometimes like to delve a little bit into philosophy.
Yeah, that's good.
Which lots of the time, lots of devotees are not very much interested in. So when we have you here, I really appreciate it. And I believe lots of devotees also appreciate it. For some reason, those of us with our roots from West Africa, somehow we didn't formally learn hermeneutics, but little did we know that His Holiness Bhakti Swami Maharaj was actually teaching us hermeneutics. So the system hermeneutics attempts to give to the devotee world is pretty much prevalent in West Africa, especially the way we preached. I don't know, I haven't been there for quite some time, but I believe it's still the same that when we go out, we try to interact with the people. And so congregational wise, lots of the devotees in West Africa are the local people. It's not like Indians coming in. I mean, Indians coming in is okay, but we should be able to preach to the local people for them to understand. And it's very prevalent in West Africa. So we thank you for all you're doing, especially with the hermeneutic courses. And
well, it's not that I'm very actively involved in that. I just like to call attention to it. But yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Maharaj. So Śrīmad-bhāgavatam Prabhu, are you there? Do you have something to share before Maharaj leaves? This person I call, this devotee I call Śrīmad-bhāgavatam is one of our senior devotees in West Africa. He's been a mentor to lots of us. So we always like to hear him say something when we have this kata going on. So Śrīmad-bhāgavatam Prabhu, if you're here, please, we would like to hear something from you. Let me see.
He doesn't seem to be responding.
Yeah. Sometimes he may be on the street doing food distribution.
Oh.
Yes. He does that almost every day.
Well, that's the best.
So without further ado, Maharaj, I know it's quite late your time. It's about 6:37 o'clock your time.
6:30.
6:30, yes, Poland. Yeah. So we will humbly request all the devotees to kindly unmute, except Maharaj, if you have any concluding statement to make.
Oh, not really. Just wishing you all the best for Ram Navami. May Lord Brahmā and Sita Devi bless us all to continue it in our devotional journeys.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Maharaj. I love Ram Katha, but I don't enjoy it so much because it's painful to see what Mother Sita went through. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's so painful to watch.
Yes.
So dear devotees, please, we're kindly requesting you all to unmute, and then we all chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation for Maharaj's presence and his kindness to enlighten us. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Maharaj, thank you. Hare Krishna, everyone. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai.
Mahotsav ki Jai. Haribol.
Haribol.